Do you hate the thought of working past 55 or 60? Do you hate not being able to live the life you deserve today? Do you hate not knowing what your financial future looks like? It's time to stop doing what you hate. Here's your host, Mr. Harold Green.
Hello, everyone. This is Harold Green of Bright Tree Wealth Management, and it is time to stop doing what you hate. Hopefully, you're having a great day. Doing pretty good. Pretty excited to be sharing today's show with you. And it's something that everybody's talking about right now. And you're going to hear this a lot over the next 4 or 5, 6 months. And I don't know. I mean, for me, the goal is to get our clients in a position where we don't really have to worry about this kind of thing because we have a plan in place. But the title of today's show is The Tax Illusion and Why the Tax the Rich Often Misses the Target. And so we're going to be talking about one of the most emotionally charged ideas in modern politics. So are you ready? 1, 2, 3, let's get it. And it goes like this. You know how we get out of these problems in society? Tax the rich. And you hear it constantly. Politicians, they say it. Social media, they demand it. Headlines, they repeat it. And on the surface, it sounds simple, but if wealthy people have more money, just raise their taxes and solve government budget problems. That's not really going to work because here's the uncomfortable reality. The wealthiest people in the world rarely earn money the way most people do. They don't live on salaries. They live inside structures, which is very important. Structures built from the tax codes, legal entities, asset ownership, and financial engineering. And the rapid retire financial planning process is financial engineering. And I'm going to get into something here but I'm going to restrain myself. And I'll talk about it later in the show, or I might not talk about it at all because it might be personal. It may touch a nerve. So I may or may not hit it. So when people say tax the rich, what they usually mean is tax high earners. But high earners, the truly wealthy are not the same thing. These are two different people. And here's why. There's a difference. Policies aimed at taxing the rich, they often end up hitting the upper middle class instead of the ultra wealthy. And today what I want to do is I want to break down why the rich can legally avoid taxes and how the rich, they get through loopholes embedded in the tax code, why governments actually design many of them intentionally, and why this debate often misunderstands how wealth actually works. And this isn't about politics. This is about how the system actually functions. And I've heard someone say, don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, the thing about the game is this. If you want to win the game, you got to learn the rules of the game and perfect the rules and perfect your craft so that you can actually win against the competition. And this is about how the system, how it works, right? How it actually functions. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about income versus wealth. These are two different monsters. Most people think wealth equals income when it doesn't. But for wealthy individuals, income is often optional. And let's look at the difference here. We want to look at the middle class model first. Most people earn money through wages. They got salaries. They get bonuses. And that money shows up on a W-2. Okay. This is very basic, but I feel like we're in a society right now where a lot of people, if you interview them on TV, they don't even understand the basics. Okay. So we want to start from the basics. And W-2 income is the most heavily taxed form of income in America. We're talking trillions. Why is that? Because it's easy to track, right? Employers have to report it. You can't hide it, right? It's reported automatically. So the system collects taxes immediately, right? It's taken out of your paycheck and it's sent to the government. And now I want to talk about the wealthy model. Wealthy individuals, they rarely rely on W-2 income. Instead, their wealth is built through business, real estate, stocks, private investments, and these assets often grow without creating taxable income. For example, if somebody owns $100 million of stock and it grows to $150 million, they made $50 million bucks. But until they sell the stock, there's no taxable event, right? This is known as unrealized gains. And it's one of the most misunderstood concepts in economics. And wealth can grow massively without triggering taxes. And this is where there's some talk about reducing the capital gains tax so that these positions can be sold and that money can go out into society through different forms. And the next thing I want to talk about is the borrow against asset strategy. This is very important. One of the most powerful strategies used by wealthy individuals is something called buy, borrow, or die. And it works like this. Step number one, you buy assets, stocks, real estate, private companies, you name it. Step number two, those assets grow over time. And instead of selling them and triggering taxes, you borrow against them. Loans are not taxable income. And one of the things we created in our firm inside of our Rapid Retire program is something called income plus upside. You get the best of both worlds, income plus upside. And if I can remember to share this with you at the end of the show, I'm going to share with you like how powerful this really is. Okay. So someone can live off millions and borrow money while technically showing very little income. And then when they die, the assets receive what we call a step up in cost basis. You can look that up. Any term I share with you, you can go on Wikipedia or Investopedia, even on Google, AI, whatever, and look these terms up. Meaning the next generation, they're going to inherit the assets with a tax bill essentially reset. Pretty cool. So the appreciation that happened during the original owner's lifetime may never be taxed at all. This strategy is perfectly legal and it's widely used. The next thing I want to talk about is the tax code and how it was built this way. And the reality, here's a reality that people, they hardly ever discuss. Many tax advantages were intentionally created by governments, not accident. They're designed to encourage economic behavior, right? Get the economy moving. Examples include real estate incentives. And depreciation allows property owners to reduce taxable income even if the property increases in value. So if you have a lot of rentals and so on and so forth, and depending on how they're held, there's a lot of incentives to that. This is why real estate has become one of the most tax advantaged investments for decades. And this is where some people go off the rails and all they want to hold is real estate because of all of these things you can do with real estate, right? Oh, we'll talk about that later. The next thing I want to talk about is capital gains tax rates. Investment income is taxed lower than wage income. Why? Because governments want to encourage investment in capital formation. Companies offer their stock instead of borrowing money. They use the stock to raise capital. That goes into the business and on and on and on. If you haven't taken an economics class or an Econ 101 or whatever, just ask Google AI, hey, create, I don't know, a 2-week Econ 101 class for me, and then just study it, right? Follow along with it. It'll teach you what you need to know. Pretty cool. And the next thing I want to get into is business deduction. So I own a company, 2 companies. And so companies can deduct equipment, research, expansion, wages. Why? Because governments want businesses to hire people and grow the economy. This is what it's all about. So many of the loopholes people complain about are actually economic incentives. You take those away, capital formation goes down. You're talking about a horrible situation. Okay. And I want to talk about why taxing the rich often hits the wrong people. Okay, it's kind of like a missile being shot, goes off track. It was intended for the bad guys. It ends up hitting the good guys. Boom, you're done financially, right? The taxes hit you at the wrong time. And when the government raises taxes on high income earners, it often impacts who? Doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and small business owners. And these folks, they earn like 400K to 500K or even $1 million a year. Some surgeons, they make 2 to 3 million a year, depending on how good they are. And those guys get hit really, really hard. And there's not a lot of things that they can do. And sometimes I find that these guys get themselves in trouble trying to avoid the taxes by getting into all of these different things that tie your money up over a long period of time. And now you got to end up borrowing a bunch of money because you can't pay your bills and satisfy your spouse or whoever the way you need to because, the lifestyle, and they're just tied up in a bunch of stuff. So don't think that a lot of these guys got their act together. They may be great doctors, surgeons, lawyers, whatever. But financially, sometimes I find out they're a complete disaster. Okay. It ain't all what it cracks up to be. But, okay, they don't have the structural tax advantages of billionaires. Now, they still earn a lot of their income through salary, distributions, business profits. So when tax rates go up, these guys feel it right away. I mean, there is no 6-month waiting period. It's like boom. And meanwhile, individuals whose wealth sits inside large asset structures, they often feel very little impact at all. Okay. And the next thing I want to talk about is how money is mobile. Money doesn't just like sit still. And another problem the government faces is something called capital mobility, right? I just said capital is mobile, and how money can move, and how high net worth individuals often have multiple residences, right? They have international tax strategies and they have global investments. Their money is just not sitting in, Bank of America or Bank of Hawaii or American Savings Bank or Central Pacific Bank or Wells Fargo. I mean, their money is all over the place. And they have private jets that they can ride off and fly to these places depending on what they do. I was doing some planning the other day because I'm sitting here looking at my tax situation and I'm saying, oh, okay. And I went into the software and I started plugging everything in, plugging in all my assets, plugging in my income, plugging in different things like that. And it said, you might be a candidate for a private jet within 2 or 3 years. And I'm like, what? And it's like, here's why. Here are the tax incentives and so on and so forth. So at this point, if your assets grow to this much and your revenue grows to this much and your capital gains grow this much, you'll have a choice between buying a fractional share in a jet or handing the money over to the IRS. The choice is going to be up to you. I'm like, what? And I'm like, well, let me think about this. Okay, so I'm doing my own future financial planning and then looking at these tax codes. And as the tax codes change, I have to change my strategy. So inside of your financial plan, your tax strategy must be fluid and flexible. And if tax environments become hostile, capital can relocate, right? It's not stuck. It can move. And I've seen this with companies, they move their headquarters. Like Palantir, they left Colorado and they went to Florida, tax-free state. And wealthy individuals relocating to states or countries, they can do that. Dubai, Singapore, some of the other places where they get Macau, it's no taxes. And the businesses, they can restructure globally at the drop of a hat. I wouldn't say at the drop of a hat, but I'm sure a lot of them have these long-term plans built in. And this creates a challenge, and governments want revenue, but they also don't want to push investment away either, because then that goes to tax base. And here's the real discussion we should be having right here. The real issue isn't simply tax the rich. The real issue is how modern wealth works. We're not talking about 1950s wealth. We're talking about 2025, 2026, 2027 wealth. And we live in an economy where assets grow faster than wages, and ownership compounds faster than labor, and financial structures can dramatically reduce tax exposure. So in the mornings, some Sunday mornings, I go out to Red Rock and Red Rock out here in Vegas, out there to the mountain or whatever. And I sit out there and I look and I drink my coffee, I pray, and I just talk to God about stuff. And I was sitting out there like about a week ago or so, and there's this man with this like awesome looking Ferrari. And if you guys know anything about me, I'm a car person, right? So I drive up, park my car, and my SUV. And I'm sitting in the back and it's like, okay, praying and stuff, reading my Bible and that. And then I just kind of felt God say, go talk to this guy with the Ferrari. I'm like, what? Okay. So I walk over and stuff and I said, hey, man, this is an awesome looking car. And he's like, yeah. And we just started going off like, yeah, you only live once. And my friends are, getting sick and dying from cancer and stuff. And, we're up in our upper 50s. And I've always wanted a Ferrari, but I just never had the guts to go get one. And he said, frick it, man. He didn't say that. He said the other word. I just went and did it, pulled the trigger. And we just started launching into this conversation about being business owners. And he owns like a bunch of different businesses, makes millions of dollars a year, just kind of told me what he did, what he owned and stuff like that out here in Vegas. And it was a pretty cool conversation. And it just kind of got me thinking and whatnot. And so we talked for a while. I enjoyed the conversation. And it's kind of like, as a wealthy business owner, he's able to do all these different things that nobody, a lot of people don't have access to. So if society wants to have a real conversation about taxation, it has to start with the understanding of this, the difference between income and capital, two different things. And because without that distinction, policy debates, they often end up targeting the wrong people. And that's why many attempts to tax the rich end up creating what we call political theater, right? These guys are out there just acting out, right? We're going to tax the rich and take everything away from them and end up spending it. You guys got to learn something about, debt, right? What our debt is, 37 trillion, 36 trillion and rising. A lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. It's whatever. And then you get economic distortions, right? And then very little actual revenue is generated by this because it's just theater, right? People can get away. And here's our closing thought. The tax system is not just a revenue system, it's also an incentive system, and we need that. It tells the economy like what behavior to reward. And we live in a capitalistic society, and our structure rewards diligence, hard work, and things like that. And historically, the system has rewarded like investment, ownership, capital formation. And so instead of asking like, why don't rich people pay more taxes? A better question might be, why does the system reward ownership more than labor? Oh man, I really don't want to get into this. Man, I really don't. But it's again, this was not supposed to be about politics. But when you have unions that predominantly vote one way over the other, that kind of tells you everything. Because that question leads to a much different understanding of how wealth is actually created and how it's actually taxed. And I want to get into something here inside of our income plus upside strategy where here's how taxes work. If you're like the top tax group, right? The top tax group, you pay a certain percent. The highest wage earners pay up to 37% when income is earned and they get it from a W-2 check. Short-term capital gains on your portfolios, up to 37% because the asset is sold in under a year. That's trading stocks and options. Long-term capital gains are 0 to 20% when assets are held more than a year and you sell appreciated stock. Qualified dividends, income, 0 to 20%. Tax when dividends are paid and it's stock ownership income, there's a plus up for net investment income tax. It's plus 3.8% for high earners. So on your long-term capital gains, you're going to pay 23.8%. And on your qualified dividends, you're going to pay 23.8%. Isn't that 17%? Isn't that a lot lower than the 37%? So 23, 37. Yeah. So it's a big difference, right? So inside of the income plus upside at Brightree and inside of our rapid retire financial planning process, the goal is to create a portfolio that generates a butt ton of dividend income that's only taxed between 0 and 20%, which is pretty cool because you want growth, but you also want income. But then that gives us the ability to change where we pull monies from in the event that the tax rates change on us, right? We can go between pulling out the qualified dividends, right? Or changing from a more heavy dividend strategy to more a capital appreciation strategy, or pulling the monies from Roth IRAs, or pulling the monies from life insurance and annuities, or pulling the monies from the home equity line of credit because it's not taxed. There's many different things we can do to help, not be a victim of like this political theater of about like taxing the rich, right? We don't need to play that game. And so knowing that labor is taxed more heavily than ownership, why not look at creating a situation where you're earning income on your assets and you have a strategy that's so fluid, you don't have to worry about the political theater of taxing the rich that you're going to hear about for the next 4 months up until the midterm elections and so on and so forth. So you don't have to worry about that. You can live your life, vote however you want. But again, you must learn how to get income inside of a structure versus all the other things out there that are exposed to this crazy tax conversation. So if you're interested in knowing more, look us up on the internet, click on, contact us, schedule a time to talk to me about your current situation and see how we can take you from where you are today to where you really want to be. So thanks for tuning in to today's episode. And until next time, everybody, 1, 2, 3, let's get it.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.